Welcome to episode 10 of the Teaching and Learning podcast focusing on first year. In the transition to university education, first year students need to know how well they are performing in this new and often challenging environment. They need feedback on their progress. Giving good feedback on students' work has been shown to have some powerful benefits for their learning and their achievement. For this reason, UCD, in line with other international institutions, is placing a strong emphasis on student feedback in first year, particularly in the first semester. However, why is it that quite often students don't engage with the feedback that they receive? Sadler and Channock give us some indication to the cause of this dilemma when they describe that students complain that feedback can often come too late for them to make changes to their work. They don't understand the feedback is too vague, and it may not be what they wanted feedback on. In addition, staff legitimately complain about the workload involved in giving feedback to what can often be large first-year classes. Lecturers report that regularly students don't read the feedback, they don't engage with it, and there can be piles of uncollected feedback in their offices. There are examples from both the literature and from the experiences of UCD staff on how to address these issues. But first, I would like to explore what we mean by the term feedback. In looking back over the emerging literature in this area, it appears we need to rethink our definition and use of the word feedback. There are two dilemmas with this word. The first dilemma is that it suggests a backward-looking process, where students receive information after an event without necessarily a chance to change anything. No wonder they don't collect the feedback. The second dilemma is that it implies that academic staff feed students information, a very teacher-orientated process. Good quality feedback from staff is very valuable. However, we also need to think about how students can develop their own judgment and self-monitoring skills, a process they can then transfer to the next context. This could be described as a more student-centered approach, and this can be more engaging and more empowering for them, a key focus of UCD's strategic plan. The new directions in the literature on feedback are emphasising the provision of opportunities for this more student-centred approach to this process. Higgins et al. Describe that attention should be directed to feedback as a process of communication between teachers and students, while Carlos in 2006 maintains it should take the form of assessment dialogues that attempt to clarify the assessment process. Taking this one step further, Professor David Nicol, a recent visitor to UCD, states that while feedback dialogue with the teacher is important, peer review is equally important, where peers generate and receive feedback in relation to the same assignment task. They learn not only about their own work, but also how it compares with the production of others. Sadler, in 2010, also advocates including peers in the assessment process, and the need to educate them in the process of making judgments about their work, in ways similar to those made by expert assessors. This is not the same as peer assessment, where students give marks to each other. One of the key themes emerging is a focus on the development of students' own self-monitoring skills, in order to help them narrow the gap between their performance and the standards expected of them. In addition, this activity should feed into some specific actions that can be used in the next assessment. Developing students as active participants in the process of assessing their work can help empower them in the assessment process. Empowerment is closely linked to student engagement. So, if we consider that the word feedback is not just what it says on the tin, but a wider concept of students self-monitoring their work in relation to assessment, here are 6 suggested tasks that students can do to engage more with this process. The first example, judging previous work. In this in-class activity, ask students to judge their work against examples of previous students' work, using the assessment criteria for the assignment. By then sharing and discussing this judgment with other students, they will be able to monitor their own performance against this criteria. This just-in-time task allows students opportunity to improve their performance before their assessment. Example 2, using a self-assessment submission template. You might consider asking students to hand in a self-assessment template with their assignment. This requires them to tick or comment on their progress in reaching the different assessment criteria. It will make the assessment criteria very transparent to the students. As in the previous example, it is more valuable for students to know this before rather than after the assignment. This does imply, however, that there is clear assessment criteria designed in advance and given to the students. Cathers in 2007 also advocated this approach. Example 3, requesting specific feedback. An extension of the last example is that a section on this submission template could be designed to ask students to note what they would like feedback on. This makes your feedback more focused and is a more efficient use of your time. It is also more relevant to the individual student, and it encourages them to take some responsibility in this process. Nicol and McFarlane-Dick also encourage the student-centred approach. Example 4, making their actions transparent. For a second assignment in a module, encourage students to reflect in this assignment on where they made improvements to their work based on their previous assignment's feedback. Include this task as part of the criteria for the second assignment. This task encourages students to consider and take actions based on previous feedback. Example 5, monitoring progress in class. In-class activities that give feedback in different formats are a useful way of engaging students in a dialogue about their progress. For example, using regular 1-minute tests followed by discussion on the answers, see Petal 2011, using in-class team quizzes, or using clickers where students are presented with the answers of the whole class. These type of unassessed teaching activities help students monitor their progress against the rest of the class, and they reduce some of your out-of-class time spent on individual feedback. Example 6, doing early online assessment activities. Early online assessment activities, such as practice MCQs, allow students opportunities to try out different alternatives to potential assessment questions. This helps them monitor their progress with the disciplinary knowledge before the later, higher stakes assessments that count towards their grades. Mangina, in 2007, also explored online discussion threads for a similar purpose. In summary, good quality feedback to students is extremely important to assist first-year students in their early experience of the university. However, feedback is more than giving students comments back on their work. Good feedback includes the wider concept of students judging their own work and taking some responsibility in this process. I have suggested 6 tasks that students can do that will help them engage more in the process. To summarise, these tasks are judging previous work, using a self-assessment submission template, requesting specific feedback, making their actions transparent, monitoring their progress in class, doing early online assessment activities. I hope that these 6 examples, tried and tested by other academic staff, will help in some way towards engaging students more in this process. The references, some case studies and resources referred to in this podcast can be accessed in the Focus on First Year Assessment resource page at ucd.ie/resources/assessment/focus on first year, and in the UCD Teaching and Learning website resource titled Practical Ideas for Improving the Efficiency and Effectiveness of Feedback to Students.